Hey, welcome to Drop Dead Serious, everyone. I'm Ashley Banfield, and in this very special episode, we're talking about the University of Idaho student murders. Just when we thought we had a full picture of what happened that tragic night, I just got my hands on some brand new court filings that dropped in Bryan Kohberger's case. And friends, these are absolutely explosive, and I am finding out things I did not know I was going to find out, but I fully expected at some point this gag order had to stop. All right, so what we're learning is that prosecutors are really pushing back against Bryan Kohberger's efforts to toss out his Amazon purchase history. And I know why. If I were Bryan Kohberger, I wouldn't want anyone knowing what I was up to 8 months before the murders, because his Amazon purchase history shows he bought a K-bar knife. Let that sink in. Bryan Kohberger bought a K-bar knife on Amazon 8 months before the murders. And that's not all. Bryan Kohberger, according to the documents, went on Amazon and bought a K-bar knife sheath, identical to the one that was found at the crime scene. The same sheath that had that little minuscule piece of DNA, his DNA, on the snap. And he wasn't finished, apparently, according to the prosecutors. The Amazon purchasing history shows he also made sure the knife was sharp by buying a knife sharpener. I'm going to pause right there for 1 second, because if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to show you. This is an exact replica of the knife in question, okay? Here's the knife, right? And here's the sheath. And if you look on the sheath, it says USMC, United States Marine Corps, happens to be the exact same printout and letters on the sheath in question that was found at the murder scene. There's another big bombshell too. Big and freaky. In these documents that just dropped, there's a selfie that Bryan Kohberger took just hours after the murders. And it's weird. It's really weird. It's at 10:31 in the morning. So maybe 6-ish hours after the slaughtering of 4 kids. And it shows him freshly showered with wet hair, giving the thumbs up in the bathroom with the shower behind him. He's looking super proud. If he is guilty of these murders, this is the most obscene and foul selfie I have ever seen. If he's guilty, he is literally celebrating to his own little camera. I pulled it off. I got showered off. I'm clean. I did it. The perfect murder. If he's not guilty, it's a very unfortunate selfie at 10:31 in the morning. This is an hour and a half before even the 911 call is placed. Then there is also a full map with locations and timestamps of surveillance video that shows that white Elantra on the night of the murders. And boy, does that Elantra drive around and around and around the murder house a whole lot. I'm going to show you that map and all the times that the white Elantra was caught driving up and back and around and back. And like whoever was driving it, and Kohberger has a white Elantra, maybe wasn't so certain, or maybe just didn't have the gumption up and needed to get psyched or get up the nerve to carry out this perfect murder. Finally, in these documents, we also have this incredibly detailed timeline of messages and of like social media activity between the surviving roommates, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen. And that reveals just how much communication was happening all night long during those murders, and then also all the next morning. Because starting at 7 a.m., they were active. Bethany and Dylan were on the phone, on Snap, on Insta, on all sorts of platforms, and texting like mad. And yes, texting to their dead roommates, not knowing that they were dead. They were working their phones right up to the moment of the 911 call. So really, what we suddenly have is this extremely full picture of everything that those roommates were doing since before 4 a.m. and all the way through to the 911 call at about noon. And joining me now to go through all of this is News Nation's national correspondent and one of the best crime reporters I've ever worked with, Bryan Enton. Bryan, this is so earth-shattering. I feel like this is the biggest smoking gun to drop since we learned that a knife sheath had been left behind at the murder scene. And then since they matched a tiny speck of DNA on the snap of that sheath to Bryan Kohberger himself. So walk me through what these documents say about a knife purchase.
Yeah, and there's so many documents. I've got like 100 pages like laid out all over my bedroom right now. But this is definitely, I think, the biggest thing to come out of this latest document dump. That sometime between March 20th and March 30th, so that would be about 8 months before the murders, Bryan Kohberger bought off of Amazon.com a K-bar knife, a sheath, and a sharpener. Which, again, when you think back to what else we know, that they found a K-bar knife sheath with Bryan Kohberger's DNA on it at the murder scene. I mean, this is
I have one.
really, really, yeah, there it is. This is
So
really
for the
damning
podcast
evidence.
audience, like I've got this knife and sheath in my hand. For the YouTube audience, you can see it right here, but this is an exact replica of, I'll take the knife out. That's the exact replica of the K-bar knife. It gives me the willies. And then the sheath is described as a sheath with USMC, United States Marine Corps, that's stamped on it. This one has that stamp, and so does the one that they found under Maddie's body as well. So yeah, so there was a purchase 8 months before the murders by Bryan Kohberger on Amazon of a knife, a sheath, and a sharpener. I mean, what kind of criminology student would be that dumb to have that kind of a purchase record of a murder weapon if he's the killer?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that you have to wonder about. If he was so careful, allegedly, about these other things, wearing the gloves and making sure there was, almost nothing in his car when they searched it in the house, not a lot of evidence there that we know of. But this would have been a big mistake on his part, that thinking that they
So,
weren't going to go back to his search history.
well, as I was reading through the documents, before I got a little further, I didn't even notice that he'd actually, according to the prosecutors, gone on Amazon again after the murders and searched for K-bar knife and sheath.
Yeah. Yeah, let me read you this part. And again, there's so much to this new document dump. I missed this the first time too, but it basically says purchase of, this is the prosecution's filing. They were looking at the click activity on Amazon. Purchase of a K-bar knife with sheath before the murders, which is what we just talked about, and his click activity indicating a search for a knife with sheath after the murders. So not only did he buy the knife, the sheath, and the sharpener 8 months before the murders, but according to this document, they're saying, Ashley, that after the murders, he searched on Amazon for a knife and a sheath.
So my theory, and I don't think I'm too crazy here, is that if he's the killer, he does all that crazy driving and dispenses with bloody clothes, bloody knife, forgets that, the sheath was back up on the, at the murder scene, and comes home, cleans up. We'll get to that in a second, because something else dropped that shows the potential of a big old shower at 10:30 in the morning. And then realizes, maybe as a criminology student who thinks he's smarter than everybody else, boy, I better have a knife and a sheath in case I'm ever questioned. And they say, well,
Mm,
you bought one. Look, you bought a knife and a sheath back in, 8 months prior to the murders. Where is it? And then he could go upstairs and hand them a brand new clean knife and sheath and say, here it is. Not thinking that maybe
yeah.
they'd search all your Amazon records, not just the ones from back in March.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. Why would he be searching for a knife and a sheath? Just trying to think, like, what could the defense possibly say? Maybe they could say, oh, he was a criminology student and he was very interested in these murders that had happened very, very close to him. And this is the kind of stuff that he studies. And he was just looking to see what would it cost? How easy would it be to get a knife? I mean, um,
Even though they would say to him, well, what do you mean? You bought one already. Where
yeah,
is it?
right.
Where's
And
the
your
one you
DNA is
bought in
on the,
March? Yeah.
yeah, and your DNA is on the sheath, by the way. But yeah,
By the way, BT dubs. Yeah, not
yeah.
good. This is what, again, in the business of what Bryan and I do, it's called bad facts. I would call these horrendous
Yeah.
facts. Like I say, these are nails in the coffin.
And I've
But
been
okay.
wondering, Ash, like with this stuff that's coming out, and I know anything can happen, but it's like, what are they thinking going into this trial? Like you have to wonder, like, everybody's like, is there going to be a plea deal? And I don't think there will be, because I don't think they're going to take death off the table because the
Don't need it.
families want. But it's just not looking good for the
No,
defense.
I don't think you need a plea deal in this case. And I don't know that the families want it. I certainly
No.
know that I talked to Steve tonight. He is so relieved by this information. He's so relieved that there's an Amazon track to a knife and a sheath and a sharpener purchased by Kohberger. He is so happy that this stuff is just lining up. He calls them facts. He's mad at
Mm,
the internet for being nasty to the roommates and imagining all these other scenarios where maybe BK gets off, and he's just feeling better and better now that the gag is starting to crack and more
yeah.
facts and more bad facts for Bryan are coming through.
Yeah. And it is starting to crack. Oh my gosh. Like all the stuff we got tonight. Wow.
I know, right? Okay, well, speaking of that, this photo, oh my God. um you sent it to me first. You got it first, and you sent it to me and said, look at this. This is
Yeah.
10:31 a.m. on the morning of the murders. So explain to the audience what it showed.
Yeah, so this was just another crazy thing buried in this paperwork. There's a photo right in the document of Bryan Kohberger on November 13th, which is, of course, the day of the murders. That Sunday, 10:31 a.m. They apparently found this photo on his phone. It's a selfie. To me, it looks like, I don't know what you think, it looks like it's in the bathroom with like a shower kind of. You can almost see like it was like a shower curtain, some stuff like that in the
The shower
background.
nozzle certainly
Yeah,
behind
the
him. He's for
shower nozzle.
sure, he's for sure standing in front of a shower.
Yeah. And he's kind of smirking and it's a selfie. And the
And his hair looks wet.
prosecution, yeah, yeah, like he's just showered.
He looks like he is
And
freshly showered with thumbs up and a big old proud look on his face,
it's
right? Like
so
is that
weird.
is that an
Oh, it's so
overstatement?
weird. Yeah, it's so weird to think about, again, innocent until proven guilty, but if he is guilty of this, to think that he's taken this selfie with the thumbs up kind of thing, right? Um, hours after,
Done.
what would
Got
it?
it done. I cleared it.
Yeah,
Aces. I did it. I,
six
I pulled it
hours.
off.
Yeah, 6 hours after the murders. But the prosecution is now trying to use this photo. That's why it's in this document. They want to bring this in and show the jury because Dylan, the roommate, the surviving roommate, said bushy eyebrows. That's what she said in a couple of the interviews with police after the murders, that the person who came into the house who she saw had bushy eyebrows. So they want to show this photo to the jury to say, hey, this is the most recent photo we have after the murders. What do you think about, do you think it matches up with the
Yeah,
eyebrows comment?
here's Bryan Kohberger's selfie with his eyebrows 6 hours after the murder. Do you
Yeah,
see bushy eyebrows here? They are not alterable within 6 hours after the murder. Who you can't think for a moment that he's been plucking them or messing with them at this point.
right.
I mean, the most proximate photo to the murders to show these eyebrows. But I mean, I'll bet you the folks in the police department and the prosecutor's office did a jig when they found this photo, not just to show the bushy eyebrows, but to show the shower and the thumbs up. Because it
Yeah,
really, if he's guilty, Bryan, if he is guilty, he is showered and posing and proud less than 6 hours after butchering 4 innocent kids.
yeah. I'm just looking at the photo again. The thumbs up. He's got headphones in. There's clearly the shower nozzle behind the shower rod. He's so skinny. And it's just, I mean, it's a creepy photo, no matter what way you look at it. I mean,
It is. It's disturbing. Okay, I want to move on to the other thing. Again, it's just this was just volumes and volumes of information in these documents that were released. The text messaging last week, the the defense had put a motion to eliminate about some of the messages, or was it the state? Oh God, I'm mixing them all up. It was the state, right? The state's motion to
yeah, I think it
eliminate
was the
about, yeah.
state. Yeah,
Okay. So, and in that motion were a series of text messages that we had not seen before. And it was really interesting to see Dylan and Bethany and all their activity, as the murders are happening, but they're by no means complete. And not only that, there was an end, right? Like it sort of ended at around 4:20, I think, in the nighttime. Well, in the response to the motion in limine, the defense actually fills out a lot of the text messaging and social media activity between Dylan and Bethany and who they were texting, calling, snapping, and the searching that they were doing on their social media. So can you get comfy for a second, Brian? I'm going to start
Yes,
reading
yes.
these,
Let's
and
do
then
it.
I'm going to pause when I think there's something that you and I need to make mention of, because it's pretty significant stuff as it goes. Okay. And you at home, get a drink and a pillow, because this is rough. So it starts at about 2:10 a.m. Dylan Mortensen texts the Uber driver asking if he was driving, and the Uber driver texts back confirming he's driving. At 2:53, Maddie Mogan calls Bethany Funk. So we know that at 2:53, Maddie's still alive and she's still on her phone, right? Then an hour passes. At 3:51, Dylan is still awake. We know that because she's creating a new contact on her phone. At 4:19, this is where it's so critical, right? Bethany calls Dylan before Dylan starts to call everybody in the house, okay? And all those calls go unanswered. So at 4:19, Bethany has called Dylan, and at 4:20, Dylan calls Xana. So maybe Bethany downstairs heard something and called up to Dylan. Hey, what's going on up there at 4:19? 4:20, Dylan's calling Xana, who's on the same floor as her. Then at 4:20, Dylan calls Kaylee, who's upstairs. Then at 4:20, Dylan calls Bethany, who's downstairs. They're on the phone for 41 seconds. Then at 4:21, Bethany calls Xana. And then 4:21, Dylan calls Maddie. Then 4:22, Bethany calls Maddie. 4:22, Bethany calls EC, which we take to possibly be Ethan Chapin at this point. And then come the text messages. Some of them we've seen before in that prosecution motion in limine document. 4:22, Dylan to Bethany. She says, no one's answering. And then 4:22, Dylan to Bethany. I'm really confused right now. Dylan to Kaylee. Kaylee. Dylan to Kaylee. What's going on? Bethany sends a Snapchat message going out at 4:23. Also at 4:23, Bethany says to Dylan, yeah, dude, WTF? Like, what the F? Then 4:23, Bethany texts Dylan, Xana was wearing all black. And I'm struggling with this one, Brian, because there's no question mark afterwards. And it doesn't make sense for Bethany downstairs in the basement to say Xana was wearing all black, because she wouldn't have seen that movement that Dylan saw on the second floor. I'm thinking Dylan might have been on the phone with her and mentioning something about someone in all black. And Bethany's texting her like, wait, what? Wait, Xana's in all black?
Or
That would make
maybe
sense
could,
there.
or is it that Dylan was saying, "Oh my God, I saw this person in all black. It's so scary." And could Bethany be telling Dylan, "No, no, Xana was wearing all black. Like, chill out."
Oh, good one. Yeah, no, you're right.
You know
Yeah,
what I
Xana was
mean?
wearing all black tonight, so
Yeah,
don't freak
yeah,
out.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
you're
Like
right.
it was probably just Xana. You know?
You know what? That's brilliant, because then Dylan says to Bethany right away, I'm freaking out right now. And then says to Bethany, no, it's like a ski mask almost,
Yeah.
a ski mask almost. And then Bethany's like, STFU, like, shut the F up. And Bethany goes, actually, like, as if to say, wait, hold it. Ski mask, actually? And then Dylan says to Bethany, like he had something over his forehead and little end mouth. And then 4:24, Dylan says to Bethany, Bethany, I'm not kidding. I'm so freaked out. 4:24, Bethany says to Dylan, so am I. Dylan says, phone is about to die. F. Bethany to Dylan, come to my room. Run down here. And then at 4:24, right when Bethany has said to Dylan, run down here, Dylan then calls Ethan again, or calls EC, which I take to mean Ethan Chapin. 4:24, Dylan texts something to Bethany, and it's not in this document. Bethany, 4:25, texts something to Dylan, and it's not in this document. And then at 4:27, Dylan makes an outgoing call, doesn't say to whom. Sometime around now, at 4:27, we think that it's possible Dylan actually made that run to go downstairs to spend the night in Bethany's room. But she did go out into that hallway after being terrified and frozen in shock, that the probable cause affidavit said.
Mm.
And she did go down to Bethany's room at that point. Do you remember reading that in another document, that she spent the night in Bethany's room down in the basement?
Vaguely. Do you?
No, but someone on my team does. They remember, and I thought, oh, I must have been off that night or something because
Yeah,
I don't
no, I don't
remember that.
remember it. I don't remember it. I just I've heard you talking about it and thinking it. Maybe that's why. There's been so many documents now. I don't
I
remember
know.
it being in black and white though. I don't think.
I think it's out there. I think our podcast audience, listen, comment and rate and say everything
Someone will
about
know.
this.
Yeah.
You're gonna know for sure. Our audience is gonna know for sure. So we're now at 4:27. Dylan has an outgoing message to Snap. Dylan has another outgoing message to Snap, and then Dylan calls Kaylee. We're back to that now, right? We're calling again upstairs to the roommates on the third floor. Then Dylan calls Xana. Then Bethany calls Maddie. Then Bethany calls Maddie again. Then Bethany calls Kaylee again. And then Bethany calls Kaylee a second time. And then we're at 4:32 and Dylan texts Kaylee. We don't have the verbatim there. It's not included in the doc. And then 4:34, Bethany accesses Snapchat and then does Instagram at 4:37. My thinking here, tell me if I'm wrong. They're trying all different ways to message. Snap, Insta, um, you know, text. Like, do you think that's what they're doing when they're accessing Instagram and accessing Snap
Yeah,
here?
or I'm just thinking with, I mean, with my friends, you're texting for something, but then they might be sending each other like reels on Instagram too or something. You know what I mean?
I don't know. At 4:37, they're still all freaked out. I think at this point, Dylan's gone flying down into Bethany's room. They're trying to call, 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 call. No one's answering. No one's answering. Maybe that's why
Yeah,
they said, "Let's try Snap. Let's try Insta. Let's try messaging on Insta. Let's try messaging on Snap."
yeah, that's
That they
right.
don't get
You're right.
much.
Yeah, and I'm just saying I'm really, really confused right now. Yeah, yeah,
I don't use Snapchat. I'm on it, but I don't use it very often. And Instagram, and it might actually show if they're up and using. Like if they're on, it'll show
yeah.
that they're actually on it. Maybe that's what they were trying to do at 4:27
See if they're
or
active. See if
37.
it's red. If it's red, a red message. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Okay, so now things go dark for about 3 hours. It's actually less than 3 hours, but Bethany's the first one to get up at 7:30 in the morning. I thought that was interesting, given that they were all out drinking the night before, up till 4:37 in the morning. Are you surprised that she's up at 7:30?
Yeah, and calling her dad at 7:30, and then again at 8 a.m. and then calls home at 8. I mean, you're going to go through these, but that stood out to me. She called her dad at 7:30 a.m. on a Sunday,
Hmm.
after being up late partying and only getting 3.5 hours of sleep. Um, my theory is that they didn't know that it was something really serious during all of this, and that they just were kind of creeped out, maybe something. But then I don't know. That's it. I'd be curious to know what the call was about. Just thinking back to college, like I didn't normally call my parents at 7:30 a.m. on a Sunday after
No.
partying. You know?
Definitely not. But I'll bet you that these parents are going to be called as witnesses, and I bet this is all
Yeah,
going to get filled in on trial. What did Bethany say when she called you at 7 in the morning? Well, she calls dad at 7. She calls dad again at 8. She calls another number at 8. She calls home at 8:01. She calls home at 8:02, and dad finally calls back at 8:09. But I'll bet that
yeah,
that call at 8:09, she had something to say, and maybe it was, Dad, I'm super freaked out. There was a guy in the house last night, and I can't get a hold of any of my roommates. I think I need maybe a better
yeah,
lock on my door, or maybe something like that.
yeah. It could be. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just think that's going to be interesting to me that they. Again, it just seemed it struck me because it's so early to be calling your parents on a Sunday in college when you
You're
only
not
got
kidding.
3 hours of sleep. You know?
I know, I know. Now, this is interesting because by 8:05, that's just between Bethany calling mom and her dad calling her back. And they're in the same room together. Bethany and Dylan are in the same room downstairs in Bethany's room in the basement. Um, at 8:05, Dylan is back on social media and is on Instagram at this point. She's on Instagram for 2 hours, Bri. She's on Instagram from 8:05 till 10 a.m. I mean, I suppose you could be on it and not active. You could put your phone down. It doesn't say if she's active on it, like scrolling or texting or
She's
messaging,
probably laying in
but
bed. I bet laying in
that's what I
bed,
think.
scroll, falling a little bit awake, and I mean, we've been there. You scroll some
Hungover.
more, you're kind of half asleep. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep. But she's also texting Maddie again. Let me go through this timeline. So 8:05 to 10 a.m. Dylan's on Insta, but 8:41 to 8:42 Bethany's taking photos. Maybe selfies, maybe whatever. Maybe she's taking pictures of Dylan. I don't know. Doesn't seem like they think anything's wrong though. If you're taking pictures, maybe it's not something you're worried about. 9:04 mom texts Bethany. So dad has called Bethany. Now mom texts Bethany. We don't get the verbate here. 10 a.m. Dylan messages on Snap, incoming and outgoing. 10:01, 10:03, Dylan's on Insta. 10:03, 10:04, Dylan's on Indeed. 10:04 to 10:23, Dylan messages incoming and outgoing on Snap. 10:23, Dylan texts Maddie. Here's something interesting. Again, I don't use Instagram very much to message people. My nephews and nieces do, and a lot of other people do. I don't. I use texting, but kids do. Young
Yeah.
kids do, And here she is on Insta, Indeed, text. Do you think she's using all these platforms again to try to reach out to the roommates?
Maybe the Indeed, and I'm not an expert on Indeed, but I think that's a job site. Like that's where
Yeah,
you can see job postings. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like was she kind of on the side looking for a little like a part-time job? Or I don't know. You know what I mean? I thought that was kind of interesting how that one popped up.
maybe, right? And then she's texted Maddie again. We don't know, but 10:24 to 25 back on Insta. 10:30 to 10:45. She's messaging on Snap, in and out. After about 35 minutes at 11:21, somebody identified as JM texts Bethany. Verbatim's missing. We don't know what said. Do you recognize those initials, JM? I didn't.
I don't. No, I don't.
Yeah, I bet our listeners and our viewers, guys, you got to jump in and put it in the comments if you have some thoughts about who JM is at this point. 10:56 to 11:29, Dylan's back on Insta and messaging on Snap. 11:29, she texts Kaylee. She's still trying, right? Again, this is amazing to me, Bryan. They're in the same house. They're two staircases apart. They've been trying to message each other since 4 o'clock in the morning, and they just keep messaging. Nobody thinks to open the door and yell, right?
I mean, they probably
Hey,
think that they're sleeping. Like they're probably
maybe.
maybe thinking the person's still asleep. Um, yeah, I think
But if
that
they're
that's probably what it
if
was.
they're freaked out though enough to like, I'm calling mom, I'm worried about the guy in the house last night. If that's why they're calling mom and dad, right? If that's why Bethany's calling mom and dad, you would think you'd be like, I got to go upstairs and talk to the girls. Guys,
I
did
wonder
you
if
see
that's
this
really
girl?
why.
This
You
guy in
think
the
that's
house last
I
night?
don't. It'll be interesting to find out. Maybe that's not why they were calling. She was calling the mom and dad.
I think it might not have
Because
been.
you'd think if if she was that worried and told her parents, I
She'd have
would
gone to
think
the she'd have
she
gone to
would
the
have gone up
roommates.
to check on them, or
Yeah.
she would have called 911 sooner or something.
If she was that freaked out about the guy in the house last night to call dad and mom and say, yeah, weird, something really weird happened last night,
Yeah,
you would think that they would also be freaked out enough to go up and like knock on Maddie's door, knock on Kaylee's door, knock on Xana's door and say, guys, are you up? Did you see what happened last night? Who was that guy? No,
yeah.
that's not what's happening. So 10:56 to 11:29, Dylan is on Instagram and messaging on Snap. 11:29, Dylan texts Kaylee again, but we don't know what said. 11:29 to 11:32, Dylan's on Instagram, messaging on Snap. 11:35, Dylan's on Yik Yak. Okay. Yik Yak, for anybody who doesn't know, is a social platform that's a small radius where you can just, it's like a message, it's a community message board. You can go on Yik Yak and find out like, wow, was I ever wasted at that party last night? Did you guys see that guy pass out at the such and such bar? Maybe, Bryan, she's going on Yik Yak to say, to see if anybody posted anything weird about a guy in a ski mask and wearing all black in their neighborhood.
She could have. I'm still going back to your theory of though that she's just bored in bed. I think she's just laying in bed, half asleep.
Sunday
I
morning.
just think of the random apps that I might open, like eBay. I don't just something. I'm just bored.
Yeah, yeah.
You just
And maybe Yik Yak was to look and see, wow, was that party ever great last night? I wonder if anyone's commenting about it. Like
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
that's
yeah,
all she's on
totally.
Yik Yak about. Then she goes on TikTok at 11:36. Then she messages again on Snap at 11:37, but we don't have the verbate. Then at 11:39 to 40, Dylan and her dad text back and forth. Verbate's missing. Then Bethany at 11:49 calls JM. Still don't know who JM is. 11:50, JM texts Dylan. 11:44 to 11:50, Dylan's on Insta. Then at 11:50, Dylan calls EA, whom I believe is Emily Alant, Hunter Johnson's girlfriend. And Hunter Johnson is one of the fraternity brothers who came over and eventually made the discovery and said, get out, get out, get out. We think it's
Yeah.
him who says, get out, get out, get out, get out of the house. Um, But that's it. Just a one phone call to Emily Allant. Then at 11:51 JM, again, Mystery JM texts Dylan. 11:51 to 11:55, Bethany and JM text back and forth. So they're all talking. Dylan, Bethany, and JM are all talking back and forth in this whole period of time. Then at 11:54, Dylan is back on Instagram. This is weird. 11:54 to 11:57, Dylan's on Insta. But at 11:56, a minute before, Bethany calls 911. So I'm trying to figure that out. Is there any scenario where you could see Dylan scrolling on Insta from 11:54 to 11:57 where Bethany's freaking out and calling 911 at
Or
1 minute
Dylan just
beforehand?
left her Instagram app open, you know what I mean, while they were
Yeah.
talking about what the heck is going on. I think this is bad. Like they're still not responding. You know what I mean?
You could be right there because 11:51 to 11:55, Bethany and JM are texting back and forth, and she could be walking upstairs at that point, right? They could be
Yeah.
walking upstairs and knocking on Xana's door, the girls, and Bethany is freaking out and says, "Dylan, I'm really worried about this. Like JM and I are texting. I'm
Yeah.
really worried. Like we're upstairs now." And maybe you're right. Maybe Dylan leaves her phone at that point,
And the
and
other
leaves
thing
it
is, like,
open.
when you read all of these out, I'm just thinking of like younger people I know, my younger cousins who are in college. You've got like your boys. I mean, these kids, like, and I text a lot, but they're different apps opening this person, that person, copy paste this app, Snapchat. You know what I mean? Like, this is
Yeah.
what they kind of do, I think.
They're fast. They're fast and
They're
furious with
fast.
messaging and checking
Yeah,
and scrolling and messaging, like back and forth
100%.
between InstaSnap, TikTok,
Yeah.
InstaSnap. It's pretty astounding. I'm just trying to imagine what happened before you dialed 911 because the first thing out of Dylan's mouth is terrified. Something happened.
My
I
guess
don't
is
know. Remember,
they finally went up to go check on Kaylee. I think. They
Kaylee? Oh, you
finally
think
said,
No,
I think
I don't
they,
think they checked on Kaylee. I think they went to check on Xana because they're only talking about Xana being unconscious.
or
And she
Xana.
can't,
I think, okay, one of them. I think that finally they, no response. Let's go. Like you said, they finally went into the room. Let's go. It's almost noon now.
right.
And then,
But she went from 11:54 to 11:57 on Instagram to being terrified on that 911 call. And why is
yeah.
Bethany calling 911, but Dylan is the one on the phone? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's interesting. Bethany dials 911, but Dylan is the one on the call, freaked out like terrified from the very beginning.
I think, again, just the passing of the phone around. And I mean, they were probably sleeping in the same bed. They're right there next to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. But I wonder if all that, like everything from, JM and Dylan and JM and Bethany talking and texting back and forth, I think maybe that's the point where they're like, we can't get in the door. Xana's door is locked.
Something.
She's not answering. We can't get hold of Ethan. We're really freaked out. We're worried that maybe they OD'd because that's the worst thing I'm thinking they're thinking. The worst
It's
thing that,
just so weird. Like, even when you go back to the beginning, so we think the murders happened between 4:04 and 4:20. That's when Kohberger, or when we allegedly
right.
got to the house.
Yeah.
It's just weird when you look at these texts. Like 3:51, Dillian creates new contact in her phone. 4:19. It's all
419 is
right.
the noise, right? 419 is when
Yeah,
all the weirdness starts because the noise is
yeah.
happening. So I think the
And that's when
murders,
that's when Bethany
yeah.
calls Dylan. But it's just weird to think, I don't know. It's just
It's
for
also
for
weird that
four people to be stabbed to death.
I know
You
it's
just
weird that
envision
Bethany called.
screaming and
Well, I'll tell you something about that. Bethany in the basement is calling Dylan on the middle floor.
yeah,
And what I learned about that house from a tenant who used to live there in the basement across from Bethany. So if you're looking at the house, it's the bottom room on the right, directly what would be underneath Xana's room. So the tenant who used to live in that room said we were all different tenants. We all had locks on our doors, and we weren't housemates or roommates. We were tenants who got to use, you know, shared communal space like the living room, the kitchen, that kind of stuff. But we all lived in our rooms separately. He said, when I was in my room, I could barely hear anything. I couldn't hear stuff that was going on the second floor, and forget the third floor because of the way the foundation is built up the hill. The floor level of the second floor is behind the floor level of the basement. You're not sharing a lot of floor level, if any.
Mm.
And the third floor is a little bit different. But the basement, you can barely hear anything, according to that guy. So Bethany in the basement is calling up to Dylan, and they're talking about well, Xana's wearing all black. It's just odd. I wonder if Bethany really did hear anything, or
Yeah,
just
I remember now the guy you're talking about that you had on your show. I remember when he
the
said that, how
tenant.
he couldn't hear anything. Yeah. And
Yeah,
it
he
makes
said it was
sense when you think
silent.
about the house. It's such a weird house. It's like it really is just kind of like the perfect storm the way this went down, you know?
They shouldn't have knocked it down. They shouldn't have knocked
Yeah.
it down for the very reason of it's been so hard for me as a journalist and you as a journalist to get our heads through that house. The weirdness of all of it. Just the fact that it's you think that Zen is on the floor directly above the room below her. No, no, it's not like that. They don't share a perfect, vertical space. It's a zigzag house that goes up a hill.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to do one more thing here, actually, too. But there's something else in these docs that was really amazing, and it's the driving map.
Yeah.
Holy cow! Let me
Let me
grab
pull
it.
it up. Yeah.
I love the way it's color coded. It helps to look at this, but walk me through what you see in this white Elantra that's basically pegged time after time after time after time after time, circling the house at 1122 King Road, and then moving past all these neighbors' houses as well.
Yeah. So there was a security camera at the house next to where the murders happened on King Road. That's the blue box that you see. So these are, and this is new. I haven't seen this specific of data before this
I hadn't
release.
either.
So these are all the times that the white Elantra drove by this surveillance camera right next to where the murders happened. 3:30 a.m., 3:33 a.m., 3:38 a.m., 3:40 a.m., 3:56 a.m. So it's just circling, and then 3:58 a.m. And then again at 4:04 a.m., which is when prosecutors believe that he went in to kill them between
And made entry.
4:04 and
Yeah.
made entry. And then you look at the yellow, and these are other nearby surveillance cameras. The yellow box again, 3:30. Just going by, making these circles, and then even over on the other side, this is just a couple blocks away, but he was allegedly kind of circling the area, and they've got that on all of these different cameras.
Well, yeah. I mean, they've got 1122 King Road with all those times you listed. Then they've
Yep.
got like right next door, well, it's just a little bit over, an address on Linda Lane with another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times that he's driven by 3:30, 3:39, 3:56, 4:05, 4:07. That's interesting that the white
Yep.
Elantra is still driving at 4:07. So then the next one on Linda Lane has him driving by at 3:29. So if
Yep.
it's Kohberger, he's sure been there for a while, scoping things out. Then there's another one way over on Ridge Road, 3:29 and 4:01 a.m. That's the orange one. Then way down on the map is Paradise Drive, 3:35 and 3:48. And then 3:28, this is my assumption, if it's him, he's coming in on South Main Street. Um, he's coming towards the King Road house.
And there's another map too, Ashley. I don't know if you've seen it, that they released that shows the route that they believe he took to to the murder scene,
It's
which
like
is
back road, like
interesting.
it's back
It's
roads,
back
like,
roads.
yeah.
Yeah, and I know it. I can see it in my head because I've driven that back road before. It's not the way you would go. It's not the easiest way to get there. It's you go back and loop around this kind of weird curvy neighborhood, hilly neighborhood, and come around the backside.
Yeah, and I think that's super fascinating because you drove it and you showed us,
Yeah.
and you can't like it's not like city streets. It's not a grid. It's windy and
No,
tricky, and you
not at
kind of have to
all.
know your way. And so if it's Kohberger, if the killer is Kohberger, that guy did so much surveillance in the months before the murder and knew his way well. He'd been in and out of that neighborhood. He'd been spotted on surveillance multiple times, many days and months before the murders. And so it would make sense that he's kind of got it down pat, but maybe is worried. and panicking and freaking out a little bit and has to drive by the house a few more times. Like, can I do it? Do I have the guts? Am I really going to do it?
Yep.
Am I really going to pull this off? Have I checked off every box? As a criminologist, have I done it exactly according to the checklist to make sure I don't get caught? That's what this map says to me.
It's just weird to think of getting his PhD in criminology, studying criminals. Like, did he not think there were ring cameras? Did he not think there were surveillance cameras? He's in,
I
in the
can't.
same car driving around, and yet you go
I
through all
can't.
of this trouble with the gloves and getting rid of
Yeah.
evidence allegedly, and going through the trash can. That part's a little strange. Honestly, if I was his defense, that's something I would bring up.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
Oh, sure. Of course. But my God, if I had a dime for every criminal trial that I've covered in this very, very long career of mine, for criminals who thought they were smarter than everyone else and thought that
yeah,
they'd done all the right things only to be tripped up by like a toll tag. I covered a murder in which a woman killed her husband, and it was the toll tag that she didn't even think about on her car,
yeah,
gauging her going all these places where she said she wasn't that night. And so, yeah, listen, I got to say, he's not a doctorate in it yet, right? I don't know how far into the program he got, but man, if this is him, does he have hubris? And that's going to be his downfall, right? The Achilles was how much he thought he knew more than everyone else.
yeah, yeah. And this is all. I mean, when we the paint the picture they're going to paint at this trial is going to just be. And
Mm,
we're just think about it. There's so much more to come. I just can't believe how much we didn't know. And
I
and
know.
these document dumps happen. Imagine what we still don't know. Like you were saying that. I mean, I don't think that they have the knife. I
No.
think we would know that by now. But there's just, I mean, some of these things I would have thought we'd know by now too. That he bought a knife 8 months before. I would have thought that would have come out. I would have thought that would have been in the probable cause, maybe.
Yeah, I'm trying to search my mind for why all this had to be under gag for 2.5 years. Listen, I've made no secret of how I feel about gag orders. First of all, I'm a journalist, so I have a dog in the fight. But second of all, I'm an American. And I'm so proud of the justice system in this country because I have been to Iraq, I have been to Iran, I have been to Syria, I've been to Saudi Arabia. I know how justice works in other places, and I don't ever want to get near to the garbage that I've witnessed over there. And so when I start seeing judges putting things into secret bags and secret drawers and putting hoods over cameras, I start to say, I smell a rat. The reason that this country is the shining example on the hill is because we are transparent and we, the people, exact justice, not some freaky despot or some,
Mm-hmm.
renegade prosecutor or leader. That's why we're great. We, the people, do this. And so the more you hide from the people, the more I get agita. And so I've been really bitchy all through this 2.5 years of gag. And I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I'm having a tough time with a lot of it. Why? And again, Steve Gonzalez told me tonight he's been so pissed at
Mm.
the speculation all over the internet about who did what and who's terrible. And it's because people don't know. So they're making shit
Yeah.
up. And who are the victims of that? Poor Dylan and poor Bethany who've been excoriated. And I agree with Steve.
Yeah, no, it's true. I forget what the saying is, but it's like darkness breeds something. I mean, it's true. Like, you need when there's nothing, when they're not giving out any information, everybody just has these crazy theories. The YouTubers and all those people go crazy. And something switched with this judge, though. I'll tell you. I mean, in the last month, remember he put out that ruling that he wasn't going to keep stuff secret automatically anymore, and he's kept to it. I
I
mean,
wonder if he
there's a
heard my
lot
show. I wonder if
he
he
may
heard how many
have.
times I've been yelling and screaming at the top of my
Yeah, and
lungs
when
about
you
secret
smell a
justice.
rat, I've only heard you say that about 3 times in 4 years. So you don't say
Oh,
that all the time. When you smell a rat, we know it's
I
serious.
my senses just start, popping off.
Yeah,
Okay, one more thing I want to talk about before I wrap up, and that is this another big thing we learned in these documents. We knew that the defense was postulating about Bryan Kohberger having autism,
yeah,
and I thought, well, hold it. What is this about? What are you going to try to put in here now? What, you're going to suggest that he's autistic and he shouldn't be executed, or what's the point? And then we got more in the filings. It isn't just autism.
No, yeah, it's autism spectrum disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and developmental coordination disorder. Those are the three. And there's a whole
Mm.
psychological report that they attach with the doctor who examined Bryan Kohberger. And it's interesting because the defense argues like we're not trying to say that he doesn't know the difference between right and wrong,
Hmm.
um, but we want the jury to know why he acts the way he acts. And I don't know if they're just, a lot of people think Bryan Kohberger is creepy, the way his
Sure.
mannerisms are, the way I mean, I've been to the courtroom with him. He is creepy. He's just got a creepy vibe to him. He doesn't look around like a normal person. And maybe that's what maybe they want to get that out there just so
Well,
people will.
that language it stands out to me. He doesn't, it's not for the purpose of showing that he does not know right from wrong. Knowing right from wrong is um, insanity, right? If you're fighting something based on insanity, you have to prove that the defendant did not know right from wrong. That's one of the prongs. So when I saw that language, I thought, hold on here. They're not gonna they're not gonna fall on an insanity defense here, are they? I think they would have had to file that long before now. But that's the language. You know, you have to prove that your client doesn't know right from wrong. In If you want to try to win an insanity case, if you want to win an insanity defense, among other things,
I
lots of
wonder
other
if this
things.
is just, I mean, obviously the death penalty is going to come into play here. Um, I wonder if it's, let's muddy the waters, let's a reason that maybe they try to get the jurors to just feel bad for this guy, like just because he's a weird guy and has weird mannerisms and kind of has a killer feel to him, which some people think kind of feels like a serial killer. Like that's actually just because he's got these conditions. Wonder if
Yeah.
maybe that's where they're going.
Look, it makes perfect sense. Anne Taylor has Everest in front of her, um,
Yeah. I
looking at
find it a
everything
little
tonight.
offensive though, honestly. Like I don't know. I think everybody knows someone who is on the autism spectrum, like a family member or whatever. I don't it kind of rubs me the wrong way a little, like, when they bring that stuff into it. What does that
Look,
really have to do with if
it,
he killed somebody?
yeah, listen, if he has it and if he has these other conditions diagnosed, right? Because nobody cares if you just say it. You're going to have some
Right.
proof of that. If he has these conditions diagnosed, then yeah, as a defense attorney, I'd scream that from the mountaintop. Look, don't judge him because he's weird. Everybody loves to
Yeah.
judge weird people. He's got these conditions. I don't know what that's going to do to offset buying a K-bar knife and a
I know.
sheath and a sharpener. That suddenly I never saw it on a manifest. Did you? In any of the search and seizures in
No.
Pennsylvania and in Idaho at his apartment, I never saw any K-bar knife or sheath on a manifest. And I feel like we
Yeah.
saw all the stuff that was on the manifest. Was there some redacted items?
I don't remember there being very many redactions. No, I don't think there were redactions on the manifest that I
Hmm.
remember. No.
Yeah, maybe if the documents are right that he searched Amazon for a knife and sheath after the murders, maybe he thought differently and thought, well, wait a minute. Yes, I bought one, and if he's guilty of this, maybe he threw it away again, threw it in a lake on the way home. Um, but maybe it would be worse if I had one. Maybe it would be worse if I had one in the apartment, even though it has no DNA. It's brand new after the murder, so it has no evidence of the murder at all. Maybe he thought better of it, or maybe he thought differently about replacing the one that he bought with a new one, given the fact that it's probably worse to have one than not have one.
What do you think about him buying, according to the prosecution, the knife 8 months before the murders?
Well, it kind of
I
fits
mean,
with
do you
all the
think he was
stalking
could he have been
allegations.
planning this all this time?
I kind of do. I think it's so weird. Like whether he was planning these girls, and Ethan, I think was such an unfortunate circumstance. I don't think he was planning to have a guy there because Ethan was big. Um, I think he might have just been planning the perfect murder and then found his victims if he's guilty. Because the stalking allegations, I think they start kind of around summer, don't they? Or they're June-ish, somewhere around June. And some of the kids hadn't even arrived until June or July. So I feel like, and he was new at this. It's not like he had last year to figure out who he liked and who he didn't like, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Bryan, thank you so much for just doing this, right? Just like brainstorming, going through these documents, finding the critical aspects of it, and then sort of helping to figure out what some of this stuff means and how significant it's going to be for the trial. I can't wait to hear what you find next.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's interesting because we were in like a black hole for a while and now we're actually getting some real nuggets. So thanks for
Yeah,
having me on.
I think it's the beginning of a lot more to come. So get comfy and, I've got you on speed dial. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ash.
That's it for this episode of Drop Dead Serious. Thank you so much to Bryan Enton for joining me to try to put these puzzle pieces together in this case. The details just keep coming out. And with every new piece of evidence, I feel like the picture of that night is really starting to get a lot more clear. And I don't think at this point it is good news for Bryan Kohberger. I'm going to be following every development, every motion, and every moment as this case unfolds. So be sure that you subscribe and follow. I don't want you to miss any updates or the bonus episodes that I keep dropping. Like when news hits, I do bonus episodes, and I want to make sure you get those. As always, please comment and tell me your thoughts. I want to hear what you think about this episode and other episodes, other cases you want to hear. If you're watching on YouTube, without question of a doubt, leave a comment below. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth isn't just serious, it's drop dead serious.